Hi, welcome to the Exclamation Mark podcast, the podcast that's HP is always high. I am Crofton Steers, and I am one of two hosts here to delight you with analysis of the second half of this year's E3 2015. The second half of this podcast is represented by my buddy, Bo Schwartz. Bo, welcome.
Hello, Crofton Steers. Hello, Exclamation Mark podcast listeners. Very excited to be here on an unusual date and time. It's Friday afternoon. But that's as good a time as any to do a podcast. If I were employed, I'd be really happy about finishing my work week today. But instead, it's just a day like every other day, talking about video games and napping.
Well, yes.
And trying to find a job, but maybe not trying so hard today.
If you are an employer looking for an employee that enjoys napping and video games, well, you're in luck. Bo Schwartz, everybody, available for hire. So,
can I use that in an interview? I'll bring in a quote.
Of course. I endorse you, full stop.
You're going to endorse my napping on LinkedIn? I should put that.
Well, you do. Your production values of these shows are always great, Bo, and that's great production work, low work ethic, maybe.
I don't know. I put these out on time.
It's true.
Just lazy when it comes to actually finding a job. Maybe I should push myself a little harder. But apart from that, I definitely push myself very hard to play Heroes of the Storm and be amazing at that game.
That's true.
So,
also, a lot of games journalists push themselves pretty hard this week covering E3.
Yes.
And that's why we're putting out this second episode. We want to cover the full range of E3 stuff. And E3's just sort of closing up today. And we wanted to take a look at the other press conferences that we didn't cover last time, games that are interesting to us. All that wonderful news. One thing I've enjoyed, Bo, is watching. Like, I've been watching some of these gaming personalities online and stuff as they do coverage of the press conferences and of E3. And it's funny watching them get increasingly disheveled over like each day. Like, they're probably going to party or something in the evening, or like it's a giant.
There's constantly things to do, so they're losing their minds.
Yeah, they look like less shaven, and their hair is all sort of screwed up.
I was watching they had a Game Trailers live on Twitch. The Game Trailers has their own channel, and there was one guy on there who was literally like this, doing, like, they wearing a tie. It's a professional set, and he's like, Final Fantasy VII trailer's pretty good, man. Like, I was like, that guy is tired.
Yeah, he's tired.
He's got his hands in his head, face all red.
Yeah. Now, we've already, in terms of E3 coverage we've already done an episode covering a sizable amount of the press conferences. We did Bethesda, we did Microsoft, and...
we talked about Oculus, which was sort of pre-E3, but still a part of it.
Of course, and I put up another question mark blog with my top highlights of E3 here. It's the top 10 games. I did a clickbait list for all of you looking to kill time at work. Boom, a list. Everybody loves lists. You should check that out. Now we're doing the second half. Second half of the...
So I think we just jump right into it because, the show can only last so long, and we're definitely going to be talking a lot about the content on here, but the one thing I guess we will say is we're not going to be talking about everything.
That's true. And one thing we're talking about stuff that interests us, that highlight the impressions made on us and that sort of thing. If your favorite game's left out, sorry, it's because it sucks. No, I'm just kidding. It's because if for whatever reason Bo and I aren't as interested in it as maybe you are.
Yeah.
A game I am interested in is Batman Arkham Knight, as longtime listeners.
What the hell is that game? Was that at E3? I don't think so.
Yeah, it was. I
didn't see it anywhere.
No, they had trailers. Anyway, it came out this week, and the reviews are hitting it today. Some of them, middling. Some of them pretty good.
Did IGN give it 6.5?
No.
Had too many maps.
GameSpot gave it 7 though, which is some
Batman
gas.
franchise is a little bit higher pedigree than a 7.
Well, it depends. I mean, like you go to the well too many times, and this has been my concern as well. Like the Metacritic is like 93 or something on the game. It's reviewing well. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, some people are definitely feeling the bat fatigue, if you will. And I am so in love with The Witcher right now, as you well know, that I am actually, and I can't believe this, I won't be buying Batman day one. I'm actually going to be waiting so I can play The Witcher more before going out to get Batman. I never thought this would happen. Batman was like the only game this year I was really enthused about,
Why?
and now I'm.
Why buy a game when you're already ensorcelled by the one you're playing?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And let's face it, if Batman was in my house. And I don't mean like if Batman was in my house, it's probably because I'm.
It's probably not a good sign if he's in your house. He's either
I'm,
beating you up or somebody who's broken into your place.
That's right. I'm probably a criminal. It's a no-win situation. But if the Batman game was in my house,
Yeah.
I would not be able to not play it. So I can't buy it. I can't have it. I just got to enjoy The Witcher for now, which is amazing.
This is you giving Witcher your full devoted attention.
I knew this was a risk. When I bought The Witcher, I knew this was a risk. I'm glad that
it was a good risk, though. I mean, it's not like you did it on something poopy.
True.
You did it on a game of high caliber, so good for you.
Right on.
All right, so Batman's getting middling reviews. Jeez, that's...
Well, no, one middling... It's just, attention...
is it only GameSpot? Is everyone else giving it 9s, or how is it averaging out?
Everybody's giving it 9s except GameSpot, but that's fine. Like, it's not that that they're wrong or anything like that. They're wrong. But
they pulled an IGN, basically.
Well, IGN normally gives super... They're the ones that are known for overgrading everything, like giving really high scores.
Yes, but the meme right now is that they gave Heroes of the Storm 6.5, where like everyone else is giving it high marks. They're dumb. They're dumb for doing that. They're not dumb generally, but
I don't know.
The internet agrees unanimously that their review of Heroes of the Storm is 6.5 out of 10. And now we have a new contender for 6.5 out of 10 in the GameSpot review of Batman.
All right.
Stop trying to overthink your game reviews. If it's fun and awesome, you can give it a good score. And all the tinfoil hat people are probably like, oh, they probably didn't give enough, review money to GameSpot.
Yeah, that's
not enough bribery.
As soon as you start complaining about reviews, you're in a bad place. It means you can't respect the fact that other people's opinions are different than yours. So you see these comments on the review sites, and like, I was stoked for Batman. GameSpot gives it 7 out of 10. Do I flip out? No, I don't flip out. Does it temper my enthusiasm? No, I knew they brought up comments that, looking at some of the trailers, I was like, wow, that Batmobile looks like a tank. That doesn't necessarily look like the way I want to play a Batman game. And they commented on that, and fair enough. Like, that's how the game is made. Everybody has a different opinion of what they take away. But sure enough, I go down to the review comments, and people are like, it's like you've insulted their mother. Your mother sucks. 6.5 out of 10. It's really, people are going nuts. So they need to chill the F out. Speaking of that, chilling the F out, let's calm it down a notch by talking about the news out of E3.
readme.txt.
It's time for readme.txt. So we're going to talk all the E3 crap that happened over the past couple days. Crofton, where do you want to start?
Well, there's so many ways we could do this. We could talk about stuff that made the biggest impression. We could just go through the different press conferences. Where do you want to start? Do you have a preference?
Let's start with the fractured butthole. Let's talk Ubisoft.
Oh, sweet.
We're not going to go chronological. Let's just go on whatever we did with the list here. We talked ahead of the show. So Ubisoft had a lot of stuff to announce. Not a lot of stuff for me that I walked away with any interest in. So if you're someone who's excited about some of the games that were announced here that we're not going to talk about, well, sorry.
Well, the one thing I'll say, as soon as they started their conference and they brought back Aisha Taylor or whatever.
Aisha Tyler?
Whatever.
Which, honestly, the best part of the Ubisoft conference.
Well,
do not get it wrong. She's amazing.
I don't know. I just like
She
when they
likes
bring in
video games. She
they
loves
bring
her
in these.
liquor.
All right, easy. When they bring to do these comps, I sort of am mixed about it. And the first two people she brings out are Matt Stone and Trey Parker. So it's a bunch of celebrities on the stage. And I feel not that they shouldn't be at E3, but like sometimes I get the too cool for school vibe. And Isha Tyler or Taylor or whatever is better than most. But I still kind of like, I don't know. There's something there about that whole thing that kind of grinds my gears, if you will. But
What?
anyway,
What? That it's a presentation and somewhat staged.
yeah, and that it's not. Yeah, it's
It's not
not like
some sweaty, executive from, Ubisoft
like.
who's like, we've got a great lineup for you this year.
Well, but did you see that bearded guy who came out with the cane to do
Oh,
For Honor?
yeah, that guy was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why didn't he host it? Like I
Well,
mean,
because
like
he's just there to talk about For Honor.
I
He's
guess,
not a
but like,
professional presenter
sure,
like Aisha
like
Tyler.
he did a good job.
He did.
Um,
But anyways, let's take it back. I want to talk South Park. It was the first thing that came up. They dropped F bombs, so they positioned themselves as the edgy presenter at E3, and couldn't be happier that there is a new South Park on the way. Now, it was Obsidian that did the Stick of Truth. Was that published or distributed through Ubisoft? Or
yeah,
is
it was
Okay, so
distributed
Ubisoft is not new to the South Park thing.
and Ubisoft kind of like no, it fell apart. The South Park thing. I forget what was the name of the company that
It's Obsidian,
that
wasn't it?
no, Obsidian didn't go under. There's a company that went under that made THQ. THQ
Oh,
was
okay.
was supposed to be representing the distribution of South Park, The Stick of Truth. It ended up that Ubisoft picked it up when they went under, bought the rights to it and such. And so I am somewhat like they must have sold a lot of copies. I am somewhat surprised that there's a sequel for two reasons. One is because South Park is driven entirely by Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and I'm just surprised that they wanted to do a sequel because they don't do sequels to much. They don't. They put out a movie. They didn't do like the South Park movie. They didn't necessarily do
We're not up to South Park 10, the film, or something like
yeah,
that.
or they did the marionettes for Team America World
America.
Police.
Yeah.
They didn't. They've done a musical. They've done the video game. They tend to be one and done before returning to the TV show. So it was cool to see a sequel.
And to also see that it's not the Stick of Truth too. Like, I don't even know if it'll have RPG elements in it. Like, it's clearly spoofing the Avengers and superheroes and like.
And that was the number two thing for me was the superhero element. That makes it interesting to me as well. And I played a lot of the first one. I never finished it. Other stuff distracted me before I was done, but I did really enjoy the time I had with it. So I'm glad to see a sequel.
I think South Park, the South Park Stick of Truth game, is like a lot of those games where they're in their niche, and they really revel in the things that make that kind of a game a really good game. So even if you didn't play South Park, what you need to know about that South Park Stick of Truth is that like it wasn't just like, oh, here's an IP and let's cash in by doing the gamification of it. It felt really like a unique episode where they were really trying to delight and make you laugh. So high expectations for the second one on that announcement. Now, speaking of the bearded guy, I don't know if you have anything more to say on South Park, but
I was gonna say you couldn't pick a game more unlike South Park in the sense that South Park is a sequel of a game based on a famous intellectual property in South Park. So it's a safe bet. It's like on the other side of the coin, you have a new intellectual property based on nothing and the first game in a series in For Honor. And that was the one of the Ubisoft show, of everything they showed. That was the one that got my attention the most, I would say.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
Hang on. What gave you the attention the most? I missed the last.
For
part.
Honor.
Oh, For Honor was the biggest thing. Yes, I think.
Why was it the biggest thing for you?
Okay, so I think first of all they brought that wacky guy out, and I don't think there isn't anyone not watching that wacky guy that wasn't like, What does this guy have to say? Who is this weirdo? Not weirdo because he was cool, but unusual. But the biggest thing with For Honor is, first of all, the trailer was awesome. So I think when you're watching that trailer, it looked like, oh, we have a new IP here, which they had a new IP, but I think I think the impression of it was just that it was going to be a little more narrative based than the game that it turned out to be. The second.
They called it a new genre, like it was a new type. They made it sound, when they announced it, they announced they were creating a new type of game. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's how they're billing it.
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of things in games, they're standing on the shoulders of what's come before it. I saw it compared to Dynasty Warriors. I mean, it's kind of like a MOBA,
It does look kind of like a
you
MOBA.
have wave of minions, and the champs are fighting one another through the wave of minions. What's unique about it, and this is the thing that made me the most excited, is I've wanted a game like this. Like in interviews, that gentleman, I don't remember his name, the awesome beard guy with the cane,
Jason something,
was saying, hey, I was walking and thinking and imagining a game like this, and finally it came to me, and then we started making it. And like I've had that where it's like I want a really good melee combat game that isn't just auto attack, use abilities, and close proximity, but where your stance matters, where your sword, can be blocked. That feels really. I mean, imagine actually taking a sword and fighting another guy with a sword. That has got to be such a difficult thing to do. It's got to be, and so a game that can translate that weight and that difficulty in that sort of visceral experience. There's a lot of promise from what we've been shown that this might actually accomplish that with a controller scheme, no less.
Well, the closest I can think of to a game like that was Bushido Blade on the original PlayStation.
I think I played that, yeah.
Bushido Blade was like it was a 3D fighting game, and it was in the era of Virtua Fighter and Tekken and stuff like that. But it was with weapons, and the whole idea was that you could instantly die.
Yeah.
So you could take damage, like you could lose the use of your legs or lose the use of one of your arms and all this, but you could instantly die, and it was almost like whoever moved first lost, and it was really
yes, I've played this. It was very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but it was really cool, definitely for its time, and it's sort of like a concept that hasn't been thoroughly explored, and I would be surprised if the developers of For Honor had not played Bushido Blade or thought of Bushido Blade when developing this game. But anyway, it definitely looks cool, and was the highlight of the Ubisoft presser for me, because the rest of it was a series of games, and I know there's a lot of people excited for the next Assassin's Creed or Rainbow Six Siege, which is a little bit of a different take. But aside from Ghost Recon Wildlands, which is looks to me to be a complete reinvention of the Ghost Recon franchise, it was a lot of like more Just Dance, more like a lot of samey
that Jason
type
Derulo
stuff.
Performance.
Yeah, right. So I mean, it was more samey stuff. So I wasn't excited. Maybe Ghost Recon Wildlands, which is going to be an open world, and open worlds seem to be all over the place these days. Maybe that's going to be a huge revolution in the way those games are played. The only other one, again, is The Division. I was originally excited for that game a lot when it was first announced, but every subsequent announcement or look at it has made me progressively less excited for it. I feel like it could still be awesome, but there's a lot of multiplayer stuff that when I was a teen or a young adult I would be really excited about. But now as an adult that has very little time, I prefer the single player or maybe two-player co-op,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean all that stuff looked great. It just didn't appeal to me specifically, so I don't really have much more to say on the Ubisoft front, except that it was a decent thing, and I think made a lot better by Aisha Tyler, but that's just me.
You like your
I got a little crush on Aisha Tyler, so she can announce all of the conferences as far as I'm concerned, even if some of it did seem stagey, and awkward. But
so what's next? EA?
Next is EA. So for me, EA had very little that interested me specifically. Again, a lot of awesome looking stuff. They had some big celebrities for their sports things. New Mass Effect, sign me up. I love the Mass Effect franchise. So.
I love it too, although the trailer again it didn't didn't say
It's
much,
just
right?
saying it's coming,
Yeah.
and that's enough for me. So I'm fine with that.
They gave the
Um,
title, the subtitle.
they did show it the a sort of a jetpacky move, which I kind of liked, but
Yeah, I mean, like I like Mass Effect as well, but you're the story for the show for me that I touched on in my blog as well is that there's a lot of like sequels announcements or they showed some sequels, and I found myself generally drawn to the new IPs. In Mass Effect, there's great trilogy and I loved it. But it's hard to for the fourth in a franchise. It's always hard to get me as revved up like the first three generally I can get pretty excited, but once we're into 4 or 5, that's where I'm starting to get a bit jaded.
yeah. But the Mass Effect thing is pretty special for
I
the people.
it's true.
It's like because I agree with you 100% on most of what we saw there, but Mass Effect has all that talking in it, and I remember like people who watched me play Mass Effect, like, why are you playing this? They're just talking. Is this even a game? And I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get what makes this on. Go away. Like, so yeah, Mass Effect is pretty cool. The other big thing that I'm excited for is Mirror's Edge. But the only reason I'm excited about this game is it for its potential to be awesome in VR, which not a lot of VR stuff talked about at this conference, E3 conference. But I really want to play Mirror's Edge.
Are you kidding? That's all anybody talked about was
No,
VR.
no, it was mentioned everywhere, but not a lot of like new stuff.
Oh man,
The
I
focus
found
was
that.
on sequels. If you divvy up the time spent on games, the time was spent on like sequels and stuff. But VR
I
was
would
not the thesis of this.
I would
E3.
argue that if this E3 will be remembered for VR above and beyond anything else.
I
Like
disagree. I disagree.
yeah, it's just because you're really invested in it. It's just every one of the major publishers talked about VR. The Microsoft and Sony devoted huge sections both to their proprietary technologies and deals with other groups. I mean, like this was big. This was bigger than motion control almost. The VR. So
Well,
I mean,
it was looming. It looms on everything. Like,
yeah.
because we're all waiting for that. What is it? The other shoe to drop, or for the final verdict to come down on whether this is going to be a fad or this is going to be future of gaming. So no one wants to really go all in on saying like VR is the future of gaming.
It feels like
All the games are for consoles and for screens, and this is the criticism of Mirror's Edge that I'm going to offer. I want Mirror's Edge for VR, but there was a lot of talk about cutscenes. There's nothing worse than cutscenes in the VR experience because, first of all, from emotion, you get like a motion sickness because you're used to the world moving around you. All of a sudden, your screen doesn't move. That's very jarring and uncomfortable in a VR headset. So they're designing the game that way, which is, to me, a sign that the game is not VR friendly, which is extremely disappointing because it looks like it's going to be awesome with the little flips you can do and stuff like that. Yeah, so
Have you played Mirror's Edge?
I've played the original. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'm excited for the sequel because of the only reason to play is because VR. If VR gets canceled tomorrow and there's no VR, I'm not playing the Mirror's Edge sequel.
See, for me, I'm playing it either way. I'm excited in the concept of the game. I enjoyed the first one, and the fact that this one is going to be open world and that you're not restricted to levels.
Oh
and you
no,
can,
open world!
You
I
can
missed that. Ugh.
you can run around and like jump up. Like the whole city will be open for your exploration. Like I find that way more interesting than the previous one, which was level by level. There's still going to be potential for speed runs and that sort of thing, but yeah, I was excited about it. It looks good. I'll be playing that either way, and that's a sequel, but it's sequel that nobody thought was going to happen, and it was also a sequel. It's the first sequel of a series, so I'm not jaded on it yet. I'm not OD'd on it, if you
No.
will.
Two strikes against it for me, though. If it's open world, that's another strike. The cutscenes and the open worldness are a strike. I'm playing it strictly for VR, but still cool to be excited. It's the more interesting of all the things that they announced because there is no sequel fatigue. In fact, I think we'd be skeptical even, if they said, sorry, no more Mirror's Edge, none of us would be surprised. It's not exactly they're not their most well-known IP or anything like that.
Um, Yeah, EA didn't have like they announced a couple of things, but mostly it was things that we already knew about. We got a good look at Star Wars Battlefront, which still looks super sweet. It's
Yeah.
like living out your Star Wars fantasies. It really does. Like I see the sound and the ships, and I'm like, oh man, it's like I'm in a Star Wars movie. I remember when I was a kid, like I had X-wing on MS DOS, and there's like an opening cutscene of X-wings sort of flying, but the cutscene is kind of like done with pixel kind of pixel graphics. It was still
Yeah.
much better than what was available on console at the time. But I remember getting my uncle who was into Star Wars. He was like, "Come in, check out this. These graphics are amazing." And then I made him watch it, and I knew he was into Star Wars, and like, of course, he wasn't into video games because he was an old man. And he looked at it and was like, "Oh yeah, it looks good." But like I could see he was not enthused, and I was like, "Why is he not enthused? It's like the movie on your screen." But it was not at all like that, obviously. But this Star Wars Battlefront, it is like the movie on your screen.
It's hard not to look at what they've done with that game and not be excited if you like Star Wars in the least bit, because it's as close as they've gotten to recreating the movie in a game form, I would think.
The one thing I will say is that I'm concerned it's going to be a little bit like you get it releases with like two levels in battles, and then you got to buy each battle separately. Like it feels like they might be rushing it out the door to meet the movie. I'm a little concerned about that, but aside from that, it looks awesome.
Yeah, it really does. And that's it for me on EA.
Yeah, me too. There was again.
They had tons of stuff, nothing I'm into.
A lot of sports stuff with EA, and you can't blame them. They make tons of money, tons of money on it. But really, like aside from a few added features in each game, it's never going to make a huge wave at E3. Like they brought out Pele, good for them. I'm sure the soccer fans loved it, but it was not for me. Sony had a big conference like Microsoft. I think the idea that people, once the dust settled, everybody was really excited at the time for some of their announcements, but I think there wasn't a tremendous amount of new content at the Sony conference. I think that it's going to be remembered partially for cashing in a little bit on nostalgia, in particular with the long-awaited Final Fantasy VII remake announcement. Bo, what's your take on that? You played Final Fantasy VII, right?
I played it twice, and Final Fantasy VII was the game that, when I didn't have a PlayStation, my friends owned, and I looked forward to going to visit friends' house to play and try the game or watch it be played. A lot of fond memories with a lot of the Final Fantasies, but 7 in particular just has that right mix of adult style content with kiddie style. Like, it had just everything, and I think a lot of people have a very strong attachment to the characters. In particular, characters in that game die. There's a lot of really moving narrative sequences in Final Fantasy VII that I haven't felt, and I just finished Final Fantasy 13. I've played a lot of the Final Fantasies. To me, it's the most moving one. I'm super excited for remake. It's a reason to buy a PlayStation 4, because they said it'll be first on PlayStation 4, but it's Square-Enix. That means it could appear 10 years later on PC. That is not comforting or reassuring at all. So it is a reason to pick up a PS4 finally for me.
See,
but the game's not coming out for another billion years, so
that's true. They've announced it really early. It
could be PS5 by the time it comes out.
Very possible. It could take forever. The other thing is, I'm not. I think I also have fond memories of Final Fantasy VII. I played it in college. We were a bunch of us living in the same house. All of us were playing it at once. We'd be exchanging notes of did you find Knights of the Round? We would. It was really it really captured a moment in time where I was sort of growing up and all this. But as an adult, in a what I call post Last of Us age, you play a game like The Last of Us that is so mature both in its story content and how it tells it, and then you go back to these JRPGs, and I wrote about them in the question mark a few weeks back, and and it just feels like they're not going to be able to capture that anymore. Like I feel like you'll play the Final Fantasy VII remake, and you'll probably enjoy it, but I think like it'll feel not as satisfying as the original did, and I know that already, and so I can only get so excited for it, right?
Yeah, that
it,
cynicism is not unjustified. You know, like because definitely, I think that there's a lot more production assets that need to be created to make a game of like super high quality now. So it does come at the cost. Like Final Fantasy VII is a long game. There's tons to do, lots of villages, and I haven't gotten that sense from a Final Fantasy since 10. 10 felt small in comparison, and since then they have. And so why would Final Fantasy VII be that gigantic epic story that takes one of the biggest things about Final Fantasy VII is like you spend all this time in Midgard that you think the entire game's going to take place in Midgard, and then boom, there's a whole world. There's like a second half of the whole thing, like that largesse and that like giant scope of the game. You're right, it might not be there in a more modern RPG with all the assets and CGI stuff. So.
or you'll see it'll feel smaller than you remember because you've played bigger experiences since. And but anyway, the other cashing in on nostalgia was Shenmue 3, and I played Shenmue 1
You've
on
played it?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it okay? Good, because I don't get it. So
I played Shenmue 1 on Dreamcast, and when it came out, it was sort of like a moment in time. It had the craziest graphics. You can ask my wife; she still remembers how much I was freaking out for the graphics at the time, because this was coming off like a Nintendo 64 era on consoles. So like everybody was still playing original PlayStation and Nintendo 64, and Shenmue hit the Dreamcast with mind-blowing graphics and a production budget at the time that was out of this world. And it felt like a real world that you were exploring. And even though there wasn't much that happened in the game, it was envisioned to be the first part of a 16-part story. And
it was the first part in a 16-part story.
Yes, and when it came out and didn't sell as well as they thought,
Define ambition for me.
Yeah, exactly. Shenmue 2, when it came out, it took sandwiched, like I think it was supposed to be 3 or 4 parts of the story into one game, because the first game is only part 1 of the story, and then the second game is like 3 or 4 parts together. So the second game is much more eventful than the first game, where very little happened. But it was just like, it was like you could go into every house, you could talk to every character. It hit a nerve with a lot of people. It touched a nerve rather, and I could see why people are excited. Because the story was a cliffhanger and all this. But really, like, I've gone back and I've watched clips of Shenmue, and I'm like, oh god, this
doesn't
not
age too well, because I looked at some pictures and I was like, I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't think I want to know too much. Like some stuff you want to go back and find out what the buzz was about. Shenmue, I'm like,
no, it's time is not being kind, I don't think, to it. So anyway. But Sony cashed in both on that and Final Fantasy VII, and to a lesser extent, The Last Guardian was like that too, because The Last Guardian is really been MIA for a long time, but it is the sequel to Shadow of the Colossus and Ico in spirit. And those games came out on the PlayStation 2, which is over a console generation ago. So they're cashing in on people being excited for this game just based on these previous games from 2 generations ago.
That's what builds you franchise loyalty, though. They have those sweet exclusives.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be another, like, call me a cynic, but I really think that people will play it and be like, oh yeah, it was pretty good, but like, I mean, they were better. The PS2 games were better, and
I don't know. I don't know if it'll be enough to get me off of PC gaming, but they all looked really great. I can't, like, if I didn't have games to play on the PC, I would be looking at PlayStation 4 still over an Xbox based on those games. They look amazing.
A lot of them are in the future, though. Like this year, there's not much that's exclusive for PS4.
Okay.
All of these are coming out. It always said 2016, 2016 every time. Like Uncharted 4 was supposed to be their big release at the end of this year, and it's been bumped to early 2016 as well, right? Incidentally, looks awesome.
I, didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw the beginning parts. They had like a technical problem with it, and I think I got distracted. But it does look amazing. There's also an Uncharted collection, right?
Yeah, no,
So
that's
this is good for me because I've never played Uncharted, but you always say how great Uncharted series is. So if I were to buy a PlayStation 4 today, I would get the collection. I would wait for the collection and then play 4.
Yeah, the fact that you don't have a PS3, that would be the main reason too. But these collections are kind of like Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 are especially 3 is still a technical masterpiece. I think it runs in 1080p already. I'm not 100, well, maybe not, but it's in 3. You can even play it in 3D. Like it was they're pretty impressive games. So to do remasters of them, I'm glad it allows. There's a lot of people who have migrated from Xbox 360 over to PS4, and this will allow them access to that series. So that's great. But for me, who owns all three of the originals, I'm not.
You don't need, they're for people like me, not for people
Yeah.
like you.
But honestly, my one concern with Uncharted is again it's the fourth one, right? So they're saying it might be the last one, and I kind of hope that it is because really, like at the end of the third one, there was a review. I think somebody gave it a bad review or a poor review, saying that like it's just too much stuff happening to the same guy, and it's too crazy, and it's too like, and I
It's
think.
fiction. It's a damn game, people.
No, I know, but I think it works in that they're believable characters, and you get behind them, and you
Okay.
feel like, oh, one of the reasons I like Uncharted much more than the Tomb Raider game, the Tomb Raider reboot, is the Tomb Raider characters. Everything in the Tomb Raider felt not authentic to me. I don't know how, like the voice acting, the characterization, everything felt a little false compared to Uncharted, which is literally pitch perfect. All the characters you're invested in, so you believe in them as human beings. So to have this human being go through all the shit that he's gone through, at one point it becomes like, all right. So I'm still, don't get me wrong, I'm still really excited for Uncharted 4, and it is probably the reason I have a PS4 was to play Uncharted 4. So I'm looking forward to it a lot.
All right. Well, I definitely gotta go over to your house and watch you play it because it looked pretty cool. Look. I'm
Yeah,
excited. But
if you like set pieces, this is the set
I
piece
do.
game for you.
I do. It's my favorite part about Dead Space. Um, but speaking of giant set pieces, or just the wow factor, Horizon Zero Hour, one of the best things I've seen this entire E3. And I think, and I'm not sure if this was promised as a gameplay aspect or not, but it felt like it had an element taken from the game Bastion, where as the character in Horizon Zero Hour was out doing, stuff, hiding in bushes and hunting robot animals, she was talking. At one point, she puts down a creature that didn't look like it was going to attack her, and she goes, "Shh, I'm sorry," and kills it. And I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Like, I love that attention to detail, and the graphic fidelity looked cool, and the setting looked fairly unique and awesome as well. Did you see Horizon Zero Hour?
Yeah,
Crawford?
yeah, I definitely did, and I again it's on my list in the on the question mark of top 10 best games of this year's E3. I like first of all that I didn't know about it before going in. It was an announcement that was cool.
Yeah.
I liked that it's sci-fi, and it was a big year for sci-fi at E3 in general. I like they throw around the buzzword post apocalyptic, the idea being that it's there was an apocalypse, and now the world is sort of coming back, and this is the new status quo. I like that. I like that concept. The animals as robots and all that. Everything seems pretty cool. And Guerrilla Games, the company making it, is known for a lot of polish in their games. They made the Killzone franchise, which I had literally zero interest in, and so I'm glad to see them moving into something like a little more creative. And my only beef with that game is the title, which I think is everything wrong with video games, like Horizon Zero Hour. It sounds like it's a JRPG or something. Like
It's not the best title in the world, I will say.
if they had just called it Horizon,
Yeah.
that would have been fine. But they had to do a colon. It's because they're assuming there's going to be sequels. They're assuming all this and all, anyway, it's
Yeah.
just like
I agree with you.
Horizon Zero. They could that's fine, but Horizon Zero Hour. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
But the game looks awesome, and I'll be signing up for that one for sure. I also thought the Dreams look really good. It's a game by Media Molecule, the Little Big Planet guys, and it's one of those games that even though I probably won't play it, it's one of those ones that I am glad exists. The concept is that you can make dreams. Essentially, they've tried to harness the palette of dreams, and it visually it looks very impressive. It's supposed to be easy enough to use, but I am not big on the creation aspect in games. I prefer to escape into games. So games like Minecraft and all that don't generally appeal to me, but to people that those types of games do appeal, this one looks amazing, and I feel like it may be one of those games that people are playing all through the lifespan of the PS4 and maybe beyond. So I'm excited for that one, or the concept of it.
I think I missed that one. The concept of it sounds interesting to me.
You
But
think what?
the concept of it sounds interesting to me, but I missed what the visual presentation of it looks like. I don't know what I was doing, but I watched the Sony thing, but I missed that, and it just occurred to me that I haven't seen.
Yeah, there's Sony's presentation was fun. I enjoyed it the whole time, but at the end, aside from a couple of Horizon for sure, I like the Uncharted thing, and I would say, and this is a game also coming to PC, No Man's Sky. That was another highlight of me for me. But I'm tentatively excited for that one. It's one of those things that's literally promising the moon and the stars, and I'm curious.
It's basically a light version, a light and cuddly, but no less complex version of Elite Dangerous. So Elite, what it does have that Elite Dangerous doesn't have is the planetary exploration and the procedurally generated stuff. But it seems like your primary activity is going to be the same, which is exploring star systems, uploading data, and doing that over and over again, getting in some space combat. So
Yeah,
if you're already kind of not super if you don't find the idea of what Elite Dangerous has to offer appealing, you might, even though it's cuter and way more visually, the visual fidelity on No Man's Sky is way higher. I don't know if it's still going to appeal to a lot of people because it still
can,
has that space
can
thing.
you land on any planet in Elite Dangerous and
No,
walk around?
no, not at all.
Okay,
There's no planetary anything in that game.
so what I think's cool about No Man's Sky, it's procedurally generated, so they have essentially an unlimited scope where you can find different things on different planets and all that sort of thing. It's really cool. They showed some space combat this time. It just the art direction is awesome. Everything about it looks super sweet. What I am concerned a little bit about is lack of direction, meaning I don't think there's going to be a story. Nobody has said anything about there being a story. I think it's like go out,
It's a
explore.
sandbox, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so too. And I think that you can go and identify creatures and discover things and name worlds and like you can get resources and trade them and I just hope that there's enough of a hook there that I don't play it for 2 evenings and I'm like, okay, I see the worlds are like procedurally generated, so they're all kind of variants of the same thing, or they're all like I hope that there's a hook there for me. It seems really awesome, but I'm concerned it's going to be a 2-day thing and then I'll be done with it, you know? So
I
I
think
hope it's
I think
not.
that might be the case for a lot of people. Having because it feels they showed the galaxy map, which seems to function similarly to the one in Elite Dangerous.
Yes.
Basically, aside from the progression of upgrading like your ships and equipment, the goal was the goal he stated on one of the shows was to get to the center of the galaxy, which seems kind of
Okay, so there is, yeah, he's right. He did say that. So there is a goal that you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well,
That might be
yeah.
enough. If there's a goal, like I might be more like that's what I need to a certain extent, like to sort of frame what I'm doing. Like I'm playing The Witcher right now, and it has a ridiculous amount of side content, just really meaty side content. But there is still that overarching drive to like to head towards the end of the story. And I think if that was not there, then it wouldn't hold my interest as much as it does, right? So I need that sort of center piece, and maybe it's that journey to the center of the galaxy that'll do it.
Yeah, but it does look cool. So looking forward to
Yeah.
just playing it. Like a lot of these things, I think at this point I don't want to watch any more trailers or any more teases.
For that one, yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like I've seen what there is to see. Unless there's like a story campaign or something with which I don't doubt,
yeah.
then I don't really
Then,
need to see anything
yeah,
else.
we don't need to see it till you're ready to publish it, guys. All right. Anything more for Sony? I guess there was.
They talked about Morpheus and our proprietary VR. I read some impressions from people who've tried it, and like good on Sony for getting on the VR and all this, but it does sound like comparatively to Oculus and such that it's not as robust or whatever. So if anything, it'll just allow for I think more games to be VR friendly. So you could release maybe a version of a game on PS4 and on Xbox One and on computer, and everybody could have VR now. Like that there's VR options all around, so that'll be cool.
Yeah.
It'll allow publishers not to lose money. Like they know they're not just releasing their VR game to a small subset of the population.
Yeah. I kind of checked out mentally during the Morpheus presentation. I think they showed some Eve Valkyrie. But the thing about demoing VR games is different than actual games because seeing something on a screen means nothing. The
Yeah.
experience of VR is in the VR, so it's going to be very heavily reliant on demos. Like we're gonna be back in the age of demos. We already are with VR. Like you don't get a sense of what something's like until you try it in a VR headset. So I don't know. It's hard to build hype at a conference at E3 unless you're physically there trying things on the headset. So
And with the digital download culture we're in now, less and less people are going to places like Best Buy. I think there's going to be either Morpheus stand set up at Best Buy or something like that. There's going to be some way to try it, but they know that problem, Bo. They recognize that problem, and it's going to be tough for them to market it. They're going to have to put their thinking caps on.
yep. All right. So you ready to move on to the next bit?
Yeah,
we got a time limit. We're already running along. We got to speed things up.
speed it up, speed it up. Okay,
All right.
Square Enix.
Square Enix. So we covered some of their stuff already in different sections, like Final Fantasy VII.
Right.
The one thing that jumped out at me big time as a new announcement was Kingdom Hearts, I guess 3. I think it's 3, right? I'm not sure if there's some sort of different subtitle. Looks
Yeah, no, it's 3.
as someone who knows that the Kingdom Hearts franchise is beloved, but who's never played any of the Kingdom Hearts games. It looked colorful and amazing, and it seemed well received by the crowd during what was a pretty abysmal and awkward presentation. So,
Yeah,
I definitely
fair enough.
enjoyed watching that particular bit as well as the Final Fantasy VII thing. Crofton, have you played Kingdom Hearts, and do you
I
get excited about this?
I played the first Kingdom Hearts. I actually never played the second, and I played the Chain of Memories game on Game Boy Advance. And this was like I played that game literally 10 years ago because I remember I was on a trip at the time and I had a Game Boy Advance, and I was playing this Kingdom Hearts game. Kingdom Hearts is like again now it has been like 10 years since the last game, so it's one of those things where there's pent up demand. People really want the next one. The idea of Kingdom Hearts is mixed between Disney and Final Fantasy, and when the first Kingdom Hearts came out, both of those brands were at kind of an apex. Like you had like classic Disney movies. Pixar was just hitting the ground running, and Disney had a huge collection of films, and then you had Final Fantasy at its on top of its game. Like I think Final Fantasy X had just come out. It was super well received. Probably the last really well received Final Fantasy on consoles. And yeah, so everyone was excited. It was like perfect timing, and it was really accessible. You saw all the Disney characters with Final Fantasy characters, but then over time they've gotten caught. They have all sorts of spin-offs, and they've gotten caught up in their lore and such. And I would say that, like, I don't know how accessible Kingdom Hearts 3 will be, but this time complicated. So I don't know. Like they've remixed one or two for the PlayStation 4, I think, and you'd probably be best off playing those if you had any interest in Kingdom Hearts. I'm not sure if 3 is going to be very welcoming to new players.
Okay, well that's good. Maybe I'm not missing out on anything, but it looks pretty
It
colorful and fantastical. So
it is like, I mean, there's if you like Disney and you like Final Fantasy, it's pretty cool fan service. Like my brother and his wife are huge Disneyaholics, and it's rare you see. And he grew up with Final Fantasy and as well. It's rare you see a hardcore like an intensely made Disney game. Normally Disney games are kind of for kids, and this is one in which your characters level up and you got powers and all that. So I mean, it is what it is. I find it cool that it still exists, but it may be too complicated now for its own good.
all right. Also shown, and again, there's a lot of stuff there. Just a brief mention of World of Final Fantasy as a PS Vita game looked really. The crowd was like silent with.
But
what
did
the
you
fuck?
hear their? But did you hear their pitch about it though? Like, in what the guy said about it?
I'm forgetting. I was
Maybe it
watching
was-
it, but I was just my brain was so full of this looks like junk to me.
Maybe it was at Sony, but see, like exactly what I just said about Kingdom Hearts is what they're dealing with on Final Fantasy side, where they're at Final Fantasy 15, and for guys like you and I who grew up with Final Fantasies, that's great. But for new kids and new people that want to get into the world of Final Fantasy, it's intimidating. It's got a huge number in it. It's being made more and more for an older audience. So they want to provide a gateway, and they've always done this. I remember Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo was similar in this regard. Just like kind of make it easier, streamline it, it's kid friendly. Maybe E3 isn't the place to show this, but it will allow people to get into Final Fantasy or the concepts, the summons, all that sort of stuff, the creative energy of Final Fantasy without like signing up for a hardcore older audience Final Fantasy. So I do like that. I'm not going to play it, don't get me wrong, but I'm glad that it's out there. Like Dreams, I'm glad that it's out there. It's just
All right.
not my thing.
Well, are you glad that there's a new Hitman out there?
I couldn't give a shit.
You know, I think that might be the Hitman that I try because the concept of Hitman really appeals to me. I just haven't had I haven't felt any of the games are a good entrance point into the Hitman franchise, and maybe this is the one. However, you pointed out before the show that Hitman was like everywhere, like at every conference, mentioned all over the place, and maybe they're trying a little too hard because it's not that good. I don't know.
It's supposed to be a platform. So what they're going to do is they're going to release hits that you can download. Because Hitman, essentially, I've played a bunch of them. They're essentially like there is a story, but really what it is that you're doing these hits in random levels, and there's multiple. The best Hitman games like Blood Money, there's multiple ways that you can approach your target and handle it and that sort of thing. But each level isn't necessarily interconnected to the one afterwards. Maybe there's some story between it, but really they just designed these sandbox levels for you to go in and pretty much take out a target, either flashy or quiet.
It could be any self-employed contractor. Like it happens to be a hitman in this case, but you could be a graphic designer. Like it'd be very boring to make a game about a graphic designer's various challenges fulfilling contracts. It's kind of appealing from a gameplay standpoint when you talk about Hitman, but there's no story. right? That's what you're saying. There's no narrative connecting all the contracts. It's just, hey, we got a job for you. Do this job.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
Agent 47, you're activated to kill this guy. Okay, I'm going to go kill him. Give me my money, and then I'll use it to upgrade guns in between missions, and then I'll go kill someone else.
So it's a career simulator in a way.
It is. It says so in the name. It's Hitman. It's like you play a Hitman. They're not lying. But this new version, and the reason I think they're pushing it so hard is I think they've realized, why keep putting out Hitman games when you could put out one Hitman game, like a platform, and then release
DLC, right?
DLC. It's made for it, really. You just have to release a hit every so often. Try and make it often enough, and make there be a zillion ways to approach it. And
did they mention then? Because I didn't quite get that from the presentations that I saw. But it makes sense now that you say it. Did they mention any user-generated content, like Hitman?
I think yes,
mod
custom
mod
hits.
tools?
Yeah, I think they did mention that. Yeah,
because it seemed if they're going to do it that way, another way to keep the community invested is in free content generated by the rest of the community.
that's true for sure.
Now, if they're not doing it, it'd be a good idea if they did.
I think they are.
And if they even had a monetize, there's been a lot of talk about this. Even Blizzard's talked about the StarCraft. Still haven't seen it. Making a store for user-generated content that meets an approvals process, so the quality's there. But this is certainly someone makes an awesome hit. Well, let that guy earn money, and people pay him $1 for his great little puzzle. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, it sounds a good idea.
Last but not least, and this wasn't new, but there was new footage. These guys were all over the place on a lot of the Twitch channels. Eidos. We're in the house to talk some Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Bo couldn't be happier. Some of the best, most exciting stuff for me, anyways, at E3 was, just seeing how the game played out. Nothing much to talk about. It all looks very promising, and
it just looks.
Cool.
Again, I feel like I'm being cynical here, but it's on my top 10. It's high on my top 10 of games of E3. It's just they showed a sizzle reel that I saw. And I would like to see some.
They had 25 minutes of in-game footage.
Really?
It wasn't during the conference, but I think it was yesterday. Like on one of the Twitch streams, it was great. So it was split into two parts, I think, and one was at a train station. The other one was in that new city where all the ghetto where all the Augs are, segregated, and. It looks great. It looks like a Deus Ex game.
Does it look any bigger in scope? Is it still sort of like the same size areas from Human Revolution, or are we talking bigger now?
Well, the train station was kind of linear because it was sort of narrative happening. You were talking to a person, so hard to tell. It was a cool area. And then the second half was gameplay, so shooting and stealthing and all that kind of stuff. And it seemed fairly long, so... And it had multiple ways to get around and manipulate the environment. So it definitely looks true to the Deus Ex franchise. It's hard to get a sense of scope in terms of, I know the big thing was like, yes, you could hang around Detroit in the first one, but there was like, I don't know, 3 areas, and they were all geographically so close that it doesn't make sense. It's just like, how could all these important things be within a 5-block radius?
But that was how the original Deus Ex was too. I'm just wondering if they're going to expand the scope at all, or if they're just going to enhance the graphics.
I think that what they talked about was they wanted to do more in terms of they have the 4 fundamentals, which is like combat, stealth, conversation, and something else. I can't remember what the other one was. So they're enhancing all of it, specifically the combat. I think it's going to be bigger in scope. They were promising that choices you make actively affect the story. So it's not like in the first one where it's more towards the end where they give you some narrative differences. In this one, it sounds like choices you make will impact later acts within the story. But hard to say what exactly that's going to look like. But certainly in the first Deus Ex, I found that whatever you didn't change the game that much. Like if someone died, then he was just dead, but the story beats still happen the same way. So if they're promising more flexibility, that's exciting, but I'm cynical on that. But the game still looks amazing. So
I'm excited for it too.
All right.
Now Nintendo continuing the trend of marching to the beat of their own drum. They did their Nintendo Direct where they turned all their executives into little puppets, which was kind of cutesy, adorable. But
Okay.
it was when compared to the other pressers, the Nintendo one is so nice. Like it because as somebody who's not at E3, it's not filming a giant auditorium. It's a direct video that's sort of customized, and it was fun seeing the enthusiasm of the game developers and all that. That being said, there wasn't much to announce, and they didn't show too much that got me tremendously excited. Their big Wii U game for this year is clearly Star Fox Zero. Bo, did you play Star Fox on the Super Nintendo or anything?
I did actually, and
Or
it was a
or
long
60?
time ago. Super Star Fox 64.
No, it was just called that. Well, there was a Star Fox
I
on
played the
Nintendo
Super Nintendo
64.
one, and the 64 one. I played them both. Yeah.
But they're generally like what, an hour game. Like I could finish Star Fox one pretty
Yeah,
quick.
they're
Like I
not.
mean,
They didn't last long.
they're pretty short, and so like I'm not, to be like, oh, I'm sure Star Fox Zero will be beefier, but like I was watching it and I'm like, yeah, there's nothing really here that is. I'm gonna play No Man's Sky. I'm gonna play Star Citizen. Star Fox. I'm sorry, my interest level is not
Those
super
games
high.
always felt novel because they were reaching. They were 3D games on a
Yeah,
console, so that was unique. And 3D, hadn't really. It was a pretty unique experience even for 3D games from a PC perspective. Like that's why they were appealing. Now 3D is everywhere. So what are they going to do to make Star Fox, aside from a
different.
bit of a nostalgia, like
Do a
do a
barrel
barrel
roll.
roll? Like what? How is the game going to be fun when you got games like Star Citizen and Eve Valkyrie and
Or
Elite Dangerous?
even the
How's your
ones like
shooter going to be awesome?
even like Star Wars Battlefront games that are on a planet. Like there was sizzle reel of guys flying like X-wings through, canyons and such. And I was like, when I played Star Fox, that's what I was imagining I was doing. I'm like, oh man, I'm flying above a planet, like, it's
Yeah.
like in Star Wars. But now I can actually play Star Wars with sick graphics, so it's a harder sell for sure for me.
Well, Star Fox has always been like an arcade style game. So to me, I'd still want that. Excuse me, from Star Fox. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't want a serious shooter like Star Citizen or
I
Elite
guess right.
Dangerous. I'd want like lots of glowy lights and lasers and shoot this and shoot that. I wouldn't even mind if it was still on rails. That'd be okay.
So the other announcements from Nintendo were they made a bunch of 3DS announcements. They're going to do Hyrule Warriors, bring it over to 3DS. They're going to do a new Zelda game called Triforce Heroes, and a new Metroid game called Freedom Force. I put Zelda and Metroid in quotation marks because neither of them are traditional games of those franchises. They're both kind of multiplayer focus games, and Zelda Triforce Heroes looks pretty cool. Like again, if I was in the right demographic, which is like a bunch of people I know have 3DSs with Triforce Heroes, it would be a lot of fun. You solve puzzles like in dungeons as a group and that sort of thing. So like if I light a bomb, I might have to pass it to another guy who passes it and throws it to where stuff needs to blow up,
Yeah.
Like there's cool concepts, but again, it's just not gonna really appeal to me as a solo player that much. Metroid Freedom Force seemed to be a little bit of kind of like a team sport thing almost, like where they were anyway. It definitely again was multiplayer focus, not my cup of tea. The only thing that really stood out was a game I knew about before, which is Super Mario Maker, which allows you to make Mario Brothers games, your own levels for Mario Brothers games, including the original. You can choose art styles and different stuff, so you can make them like 8-bit Mario, you can make it Super Mario Brothers 3, you could make it the new Super Mario Brothers with the really quite nice graphics. Like you can make it in lots of different ways. I think you can even mix and match those styles if you want. But anyway, it's like, so it's a creative toolkit. But I love Mario. That's always going to hold a big space in my heart. The 8-bit, the 2D Mario. So I really think that this is a cool thing. Because they have that tablet on Wii U, so you can easily like make these levels. Looks really intuitive. I'm not normally into creative stuff like that, and it appeals to me. So
Yeah, my initial reaction was, "Hey, why is this just coming out now?" Like Super Mario Bros has been around forever. I feel like a game like this could have been released at some point in the future with so many modding tools available. And this is as a PC gamer, so maybe I take these things for granted. It feels like, yeah, too little, too late. But you made a point about Kingdom Hearts earlier, or about, sorry, the Final Fantasy franchise, and that, young people need an entry point into these kinds of things. There's still an audience for 2D side-scrolling Mario games, and there is still, an audience for young people who want to be creative, making their own levels in Mario Brothers. So I
I'll
think
tell
it's
you right
fine,
now.
but
Take our friend like Mike Hodgins, okay,
yeah.
who's a casual video game player. If you asked Mike Hodgins, would he want to play this game or play with it, he would be all over it in 2 seconds. And because it taps into sort of the nostalgia that he has with those types, with the Mario games, it's really easy. Everybody can play Mario. And it provides a really amazing input device in
Oh,
the stylus and the Wii U, right? So,
and,
so those
there's
are
a building on fire in my neighborhood or something.
really.
I don't know what
See,
it is.
maybe somebody used a fire flower. Oh, Mario joke. Doo-doo-doo. So yeah, that's about it from Nintendo. I think it was a bit. Everybody kind of agreed it was a little. It's Mario's 30th anniversary, and everybody was like, "Yay, Mario's amazing!" But aside from Mario Maker, we got nothing. So yeah, it was a little bit disappointing on that front.
Yeah. Meh. Good for Nintendo people, but didn't I? Nothing came out in the news that jumped out at me as exciting. Is there anything else from the Nintendo presentation?
No, that's it.
All right, let's move on to the PC Gamer Show.
I
Which
like how you pronounce that differently. Like you're like, "Oh, this is the main event to Bo." We're getting excited.
Well, I'd want to say it was the main event, but it was kind of crappy, and I think that a lot of people felt the same way about it. So,
But it's good that they do it, man. I like that they do it. It's too bad that the first year was 100 hours long, but in the future, they're going to learn and it's going to get better and better, I think.
well, yeah. So that's the one thing. That's why we give feedback because hey, we didn't enjoy what you had to present. So next year do better. We definitely still, I think, PC gamers want their own little 15 minutes as part of the E3 conference. And certainly Day 9, the guy presenting, is a pretty cool guy in the gaming community on Twitch, and so people really
Yeah,
enjoy watching him.
there's positive feedback for how he did it. So hopefully, the fact that there's negative feedback over some aspects of the show are mitigate. Like I hope that doesn't fall on him. Like I hope they bring him back next year.
Yeah.
So going into the first, let's face it, if you've listened to this show at all previously, Mo here is a huge Blizzard fan, and that's one of the reasons I think this PC Gamer Show is so useful, is because Blizzard didn't really have a spot at any of the other press conferences, and I think they're a big presence, and it's worth them having kind of like a place to announce and show things. So they announced there's some. This is the year for StarCraft. They announced some StarCraft 2 stuff, a new trailer, and they revealed some prologue missions for StarCraft 2, the third part of StarCraft 2. What's the third part called again, Bo?
Legacy of the Void.
And what'd you think?
Well, first of all, anything StarCraft is going to be awesome. So it was very cool to see all the Protoss doing Protoss things. Zeratul getting into a little fight with a character that I didn't recognize, another Protoss. But so one of the big things is that they announced there will be some free prologue missions. So StarCraft is a game split into 3 parts. It's StarCraft 2, but just like Horizon Zero Hour, every StarCraft has 3 parts. What Blizzard's doing with the 3rd part is saying, we don't want to make you have to buy part 1 and part 2. So part 3 is a standalone game. And also they're offering completely for free 3 prologue missions that introduces the story.
God, this is the most drawn out game of all time. Like they should. Oh God.
But to be fair, like there's a lot of quality put into this product. There's some great CGI. There's some great story stuff happening. So, I mean, I wish they'd come out faster, but really, they're milking it for all it's worth. And,
I'm actually surprised at how slow they've come out, to be honest. Like, just because of the fact that the core structure,
engine is in place.
Yeah, was done like years ago, and they're really, I understand. There's new CG. Maybe they tweak some units. They add a couple of things.
But they rebuild a lot from the ground up. Like in the first game, Wings of Liberty, and you've played this a bit. You're on the Hyperion, doing Hyperion things. In part 2, there's no Hyperion anymore. You're in a Zerg. I can't remember what they're called. Like a big brood ship traveling space. It's all new assets. Like they do take the time to rebuild all the assets from the ground up. So they are like standalone games. But yeah, could they come out sooner? Sure, but I think they're really busy with it. It's the
Other
same
games.
team that does that. I'm sure I'm right on this. It's the same team that does Heroes of the Storm that works on StarCraft. Like
really?
it was a mod. It was they were pitching it as part of the level editor business for StarCraft, but Heroes of the Storm grew into its own thing. Where like Dustin Browder is the lead on Heroes of the Storm. He's also the lead on StarCraft. Like their team is doing 2 games at the same time, and effectively the reason why Legacy of the Void is delayed is because like a lot of their resources are working on Heroes of the Storm rather than StarCraft.
Well, let me review Legacy of the Void right now. 6.5.
Anyways, the bigger news with Blizzard saving the PC Gamer show was that 2 new heroes for Heroes of the Storm were
That's
announced.
big news.
It's so much hype. That game is like a hype machine. We're getting
for you, maybe.
We're getting remember Leoric from Diablo 3, the Skeleton King? You've played at least that far in Diablo 3. He's coming as a hero, gonna be amazing, and the monk will join the roster.
Sweet monk.
The monk. Michael Hodgins played a monk. He'd like that. But
they're rounding out some Diablo characters. Good on them.
Yeah, it's a huge PR push. They're doing Eternal Conflict. There's some Diablo maps. There's a angelic Diablo skin coming, which looks pretty awesome to see Diablo as an angel. A lot of great stuff. Anyways, that they saved the show. Them and No Man's Sky rounding out the end of the show. Both very interesting presentations.
Did DayZ save the show, Bo?
Kind of not really. Like, so DayZ Forever in Early Access was on the show to let us know that, hey, we'll be out of beta. But it was so hard to pay attention.
Aren't they in beta already?
No, they're like it's still an early alpha or something.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think so. I don't know. I don't keep track of it. Hang on, let me check. I'll go to.
They've made so much
Steam
money.
right now.
It's sickening for a game that's not even in beta.
I bought it on sale because I'm like, DayZ is where it's at. This game is going to launch and everyone's going to be there and I'm going to own it by the time it comes out. So I don't really want to play early access, but I wanted it on sale for a good price.
Oh, man.
All right, let me see. Is it?
Somebody needs to make a better version of that game. Actually, it exists. It's called State of Decay. Go play that.
Well, State of Decay is not online. It's actually H1Z1 is the one I think that's getting all the hypes.
I don't want to play that.
Well, it's Daybreak Games, formerly Sony Online Entertainment, the makers of PlanetSide 2. Come on. Should give it a shot. Anyways, I don't know what status it's in, but it's not released, and I'm pretty sure I bought my copy over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. So, yeah. Okay, so that covers PC Gamer Show. I know there was a lot on the PC Gamer Show, but nothing worth talking about. Cliff Bleszinski's back. Once his game is, once a lot of these games are closer to release, we'll probably talk about them. But
it's true. We got to save some stuff for the future.
Yeah, a few other honorable mentions about stuff outside of any things. Real quick, new Transformers game. Always love my Generation 1 Transformers games.
Here's the
Excited
thing.
about that.
I can give 2 shits about Transformers games. However, This game is supposedly being made by Platinum Games, who made one of my recent recommends, Vanquish, has made Bayonetta, and is known for sweet, stylish action games. So maybe even I will play this Transformers game, Bo.
That's awesome. It does look like a dime.
Sweet.
Yeah, another big mention: Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain had a very mesmerizing trailer that I loved, and Crofton, you didn't see it,
I
so
haven't
you
seen
can't
it yet,
really
but
comment. But
I
you are the
started.
Metal Gear Solid fan that I know.
Well, I'm like the guy. I'm like Metal Gear Solid and I are in a like abusive relationship where I go back to them each time they beat me around, tell me how much they love me while they're punching me in the face, and I cry. And then next time a Metal Gear Solid comes out, I said I can't go back. They're gonna treat me like shit again. And then of course I do go back, and then they beat me up and laugh at me. So Metal Gear Solid 5, I've stopped looking at all this stuff. I know it's going to come out. All the critics are going to give it 10 out of 10, and then they're all going to regret it within 20 minutes, which is what always happens with Metal Gear games.
I don't
but
know.
but I'm still like, I haven't played Ground Zeroes. Like, I've managed to stay away. I know what's going to happen, though. It's going to release in a no man's land of gaming. I'm going to have nothing better to do. I'm going to go back. I'll be like, maybe this time it'll be different,
it's gonna
Metal
get a
Gear
10.
Solid.
It'll get tens.
Yeah, maybe this time it'll be different, Metal Gear Solid. Maybe you'll treat me nice, and then we'll start playing, and it'll be like some crazy shit.
It looks. How could it's gonna be crazy? Did you see what that trailer is? The trailer looked just, it's like no other trailer that I've ever seen for a game before. From what I've heard, it's a lot of service to fans who kind of know what's going on in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. But I loved the music in this particular soundtrack. It had me very curious about what's going on in that game. Even though, like you, I know I'm gonna play it at some point and be like, what am I playing?
Yeah,
Like,
it's crazy.
Anyways, all right. Last few other things. King's Quest is coming back. I'm excited. The main reason I'm excited about a King's Quest is Space Quest. Please, more Space Quest. Like, do well, King's Quest, so we can have the two guys from Andromeda come back and give us a good Space Quest.
Yeah, I'm for that. I love all those old Sierra classics, and I don't think it's funny. I really like King's Quest 5 and 6, but I don't think anyone would say King's Quest is their favorite. Like, I like Quest for Glory and Heroes Quest. So hopefully King's Quest will start the ball rolling, and we'll see other Quest relaunches.
Yeah, to me, King's Quest was always like the pinnacle of the Quest games, but yeah, you're right. Like, it was never my favorite, and nobody I knew ever said it was their favorite. Last but not least, and this wasn't an announcement because it's already been announced, but Banner 2 Saga had a few. They were around. They were making the rounds. I loved the first Banner Saga. I thought it was a well-crafted, if kind of short game, and stoked for a second one. Have you played the first one yet, Crofton?
I have not yet.
You need, this is if it goes on sale, you have some time to get into a short game that is punishing, kind of like FTL. Pick up Banner Saga. I recommend for PC. I don't recommend necessarily playing on your iPad because you can get it there. But yeah. All right.
That's our. That sounds like it's our E3 wrap up. Look, we're gonna go into these a lot more in detail in future episodes. It just happens this is the week where everything's happening. We want to get our initial impressions out. We reserve the right to change our mind on any of these things, and we will see more as things go on. But while all this craziness has been happening in Los Angeles, we have been playing games ourselves. So let's find out a little bit about
You're always
that.
talking about making kids' minds like vegetables. Talk about them out on the street smoking pot.
This is Games Per Minute.
How do you feel about cutting his head off? Fun.
All right. Games Per Minute, where we talk about the games we've been playing. I've been continuing to play from the last episode, Sleeping Dogs, and in fact, I finished it.
Of course you did. You're Bo.
Well, it's not that long of a
It
game.
is. You have lost perspective of what a long game is. I remember you telling me Watch Dogs wasn't long. I'm like, that game's fucking super long. It's
Maybe.
It's just you just plow through them when you go in the zone. That's why.
Yeah, it's true. But, I mean, at a certain point, I was doing side missions. So, two things. there was a kind of cool. You meet like Emma Stone voice acts this girl Tiffany in the game, and it's like, hey, call her up and go on a date. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. There's like a dating side to this story. And unfortunately, you date everyone once and then break up with them or just never talk to them again.
Yeah, you're a jerk.
Very disappointing, considering I felt like that was part of the ongoing narrative. So it's just like,
It's weird, eh? It just drops off.
yeah, like some of it made sense. Like there's the one girl you meet in the karaoke bar and she catches you cheating on you. So yeah, okay, that ends after one date. But like Tiffany didn't find out about any of this stuff. I want to date Tiffany again. It's like, no, it's just stopped. It just, there's no conclusion to this. And there's 5 girls that you can have these narrative stories dates with that just go nowhere. So
it's funny
felt
though.
really unfinished to me. Didn't like it.
I feel that there's a story there because it feels like that game was, it used to be called True Crime Hong Kong or True Crime or something, and it got rebranded about 8 different times. It went through different development cycles. I sort of feel like that they had something, but they weren't able to finish it or whatever. Like, it feels like something that might be expanded in the future. But it definitely is funny how there's really no way to play those other than being a sleazebag a little bit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, but it walks a fine line because apparently you're a good guy in that game. It's not like Grand Theft Auto where you're clearly a criminal. And
I mean the dating.
Well, that's what I mean too. Like, I thought maybe there'd be this sense in the narrative that one of these women, you'd be like, listen, I'm really a good guy. You know, like you'd open up and develop a relationship with, and it just didn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
That's like Nico and Kate in Grand Theft Auto 4.
Yeah.
There's the dating game in Grand Theft Auto 4, but really, he's meant to be with Kate. R.I.P.
So, the other gripe is too that at a certain point, I was like, why am I doing the side missions? They're fun, but I have a limited amount of time to play this game. I don't want... I think it was... It was short, but I didn't want to be playing it for weeks. I had heroes I wanted to get back to. I have other games I want to play. So at a certain point, I said, you know what? F the side stuff. There's nothing rewarding that's coming from it. There's no new narratives, like doing the cop jobs or doing the some of the favors. It was just like, oh, hey, drive me to this point. Okay, great, thanks. Here's some money and some fame. At a certain point, I just said, I'm just strictly doing the core missions, the police missions, and the criminal missions, and that's it. And I plowed through the game because I wanted to see the story and beat up on some dudes. And then I got through it and finished it, and it was enjoyable, but...
I agree 100%. You're right to... Your time is... If you're not getting 100% of enjoyment out of it, move on, because that's the thing about open world games. Yeah, you play the main story, but if the side content isn't fully developed enough, you gotta be like, I'm gonna go try something else, you know?
Yeah, like I just don't have time to be playing all that side stuff, so it just wasn't worth it, which is a shame because I actually kind of still want to play the game. I really love the setting and I want more.
What about the DLC? Did you get the definitive edition?
Yeah, I have the definitive edition, so it has DLC.
There's like some kung fu tournament on an island.
Yeah, I looked up what it was about. It seemed like goofy stuff, and I don't like the game that much that I'm going to play any of it. So
all right, I would like to do the kung fu tournament.
I mean, I'd like to. I don't know. I preferred the main campaign, and so I'd want more main campaign style stuff. Not every game needs a zombie expansion.
Right.
But, that's just me. And then Tavern Brawls came to Hearthstone. It was pretty fun. If you haven't done it, it's completely free. If you play Hearthstone, you might as well go do that. And it's basically Ragnaros versus Nefarian, and you have ridiculous cards, and it was very enjoyable. So
how much of your time is it going to take in Hearthstone? Now, when you start off Hearthstone, are you going to how often are you going to go into the Tavern Brawls section?
Probably at least to get the rewards. It seems like there's going to be a reward every week. There's a new themed Tavern Brawl every week.
Okay.
So in this one, when you win your first game, you get a pack of cards. So might take one game or 2 games to get that, maybe 3. It's maybe about an hour. I kept playing though. I played a bunch of games because it was just actually kind of fun to play with all the crazy cards that were available in the in these pre-made decks. So they had like, a 2-mana 6/6 taunt and that kind of thing. So anyways, a lot of fun. Tavern Brawls, check that out. I played that this week. And of course more Heroes, but nothing more to say there. Crofton?
I'm still playing The Witcher.
Of course.
Honestly,
You'll
it's
be
funny.
playing that for the next month. So
No, but it's true, or more. And it's funny because I was thinking about it the other day, because I get maybe like an hour, 2 hours here and there a day or whatever. I was thinking, because you're like, I finished Sleeping Dogs. It's not that long. I bet you if you were playing The Witcher 3, you in less than a day would be where I am in the game. Like you'd be able to put that time in and just get to where I am. So I know I'm going to be playing this game for a long time. And one of the reasons I'll be playing it for so long is because what you said about Sleeping Dogs, about the side content. I have never ever played an open world game. Like maybe Red Dead or maybe Batman Arkham City. These are games that kind of do it, but I've never played an open world game that makes side content as consequential and as meaty as The Witcher 3. Every side thing that you do, there is no junky side things. Every side thing that you do has story or narrative or voice acting or context. Like, any Witcher contract you pick up is not just like, go kill this nameless mob. It's like, go talk to people in a town, learn why the ghost is haunting the town. Oh, there were these spurned lovers. You got to, do all this sort of stuff and honestly, it is constantly impressive. The game is huge in scope and size. Like just the square footage of where you can go is incredibly impressive, but it's almost more impressive in the density of the narrative and the density of the side stuff and the quests and all that. I find it's kind of like, in many ways, it's like the anti-Kingdoms of Amalur, where I played Kingdoms of Amalur last year, and I was just looking for a game that felt good thumb candy combat, which The Witcher also has. Yeah. Kingdoms of Amalur had this, but it was in such a vanilla world with tons of like fetch quests and kill 10 of this or do 10 of this. It was like a single player MMO. The Witcher, it could not be more different than that. It is constantly challenging you with moral decisions, not black and white decisions. Sometimes you think you're making the right decision, but you're not, or maybe there is no right decision. Like I was on the road with my horse the other day. This guy's getting lynched by these 3 other guys, and you can step in, and but the only way the guy who's being lynched is a deserter of an invading army, and the 3 people were people whose families had been killed by this invading army. And he's like, I'm deserting, I'm trying to go back to my family. And so you can step in and save him from being lynched, but the only way you can do that is by killing the 3 people lynching him, who are essentially, rightfully upset that their families were murdered and all this by this invading army. So though the right thing to do may be to save him, you've killed 3 people to save the one. And is that the right thing to do? Nobody tells you it is or it's not, So it's a very...
Is this a side mission?
Yeah, this is just something.
Yeah, it's way better than Sleeping Dogs already.
Yeah, something that just happened on the road, and like the guy pleads, and everybody sort of pleads their case. No, it's pretty awesome, and I'm gonna have a lot more to say on it, but I know that we're running long this episode because it's the E3 week, so I'll have more.
We'll have like a Witcher wrap up special once you get close to being done with that game.
I'm gonna write a question mark on The Witcher for sure. It's going to have so many like witch puns. Bewitched my heart at the witching hour.
Great. Just great. All right. So then if you're done talking about The Witcher.
Which is awesome.
We're not going to do a dialogue tree again this week, but it'll be back next episode for Shizzle. Let's do an inventory management real quick. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Inventory management is a challenging and inexact science.
All right, so Crofton, this is where we're going to tell our listeners whether something is worth spending their cash or vendor trash. What do you got for us today?
All right, so today, because Batman Arkham Knight is coming out, I wanted to recommend the red-headed stepchild in the Batman franchise, Batman Arkham Origins, and it was made by not Rocksteady, the company that made the Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. It was made, in fact, by Eidos, and it is. It's good. It's a really good game. It doesn't quite meet the standard set by Arkham City previous, but it's still really awesome. And I feel like people are just ignoring it and writing it out of history. Like, yes, there's an element of a cash grab there. There was a big gap between Arkham City and Arkham Knight, but at the same time, I really felt like it was a worthwhile game, and it's one that with Arkham Knight sort of getting not middling reviews, it's getting good reviews, but people saying that they may have gone to the well too many times, or that that Arkham City may have been better. It made me flash back to the similar reviews that came out with Arkham Origins. I would say if you like the Batman series, you can go wrong with Arkham Origins. If Arkham Origins was a Spider-Man game or a Superman game, it would be the best one of their games. Like, it's just the fact that it's a Batman game, and Batman has had a stellar run lately, but it's still maybe one that you would have missed. I totally recommend it. So my recommendation, Batman Arkham Origins.
All right, that's a good one. For me, my recommendation of the week is going to be South Park: The Stick of Truth, in honor of the Fractured Butthole announcement at E3 this week. If you're into South Park, now it's not a recommendation for people who hate South Park, because you're just going to hate this. But if you're into South Park, go to Steam or just go find a trailer for The Stick of Truth. If it doesn't grab you in any way, tickle you emotionally and making you laugh or whatever, there's something wrong with you. Like, if you're a South Park fan, you will like the South Park game. So if somehow you like the South Park show and think that you won't enjoy the game, that's incorrect. You will. So I promise you, you will. Like, it may not seem like that at first, but you'll get the levels in that game that will be like, oh yeah, this is why I like South Park.
I've read that it's like an entire season of South Park, like diluted into one game.
There is some stuff in a game that I just never thought I'd see in that game, and it makes it worth the price of admission, especially if you can get it on a sale. So, South Park: Stick of Truth. I'd love to just dish about all the crazy things in there, but you really just need to discover this for yourself.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to spoil it, because some of it
it's also kind of adult too, and I don't, the show isn't necessarily rated PG, but like,
fuck no.
It's pretty nasty what happens in that game. Like, there are levels in there I never thought I'd go exploring.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You were fractured but whole.
Yes. Okay, so that's my recommendation, and that's all I got to say about that. You ready?
All right.
Let's do some wrap up stuff, and then
wrapping up, exmpodcast.com. That's where you can find us. You can find all new episodes of the show there, as well as my blog, The Question Mark. You can also follow us at EXM Podcast, that's of course on the Twitter, or you can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/EXM Podcast. You can email us, and we would love that. Tell us what your thoughts are of E3. What were the highlights, lowlights, everything in between. That's exmpodcast@gmail.com. And we stream every episode live on Twitch at twitch.tv/EXM Podcast. Generally Monday evenings. We've done a couple of E3 specials this week, but we'll be returning to normal soon. And if you like this show, we'd invite you to explore our sister show, which is Good, Bad, or Bullshit. You can go to goodbadbull.com. Bo and myself are joined by Michael Hodgins, in which we review a random topic each week, provided by the random topic generator. Bo, if people want to follow you individually, how can they do that?
You can find me at Bo Schwartz.
Wow.
We got to keep it quick. Our show's running long, so just get to the point. Let's do this.
All right, okay. You can follow me, Crofton Steers. You can follow me at Crofton Steers.
Amazing.
Twitter.
Mind blowing. Mind blowing that
was
wasn't
that
taken.
fast? Fast enough?
Yeah.
All right. So before we leave, we have to close the show with a Master Game Theater quote. Bo, this week, what is it?
It's now time for Master Game Theater. This time we're doing a classic, so if you've stayed with us this long throughout the show, you are going to be well rewarded with a great little piece from the game Mario and Super Mario 64, among others. It's Mario. Are you ready for this, Crofton? It's me doing it this week, right?
Yes, for sure.
All right.
I like how you picked one that even you can't screw up.
I know. Yeah. We have to do this sometimes, so I wanted to do this one. All right.
Let's do it, buddy. E3 week's as good a time as any.
All right. Hey, it's a me, Mario. Let's go.
I'm a Wario. I'm a gonna win.
Oh no, you don't.